In this video, we are looking at marbling. That is, applying acrylic paint onto a surface to make it look like marble. It's a faux finish technique where we use different layers of paint to get that translucent sort of glaze. And here in this painted finish, we'll be doing a white or black on white Carrera style marble, and also this green verdigris sort of marble. So off we go. So marbling, or the painted finish called marbling, also known sometimes as trompe-l'oeil, which is French for trick of the eye. What we're going to do is try and trick the eye into thinking that something that is not marble is marble. So not to confuse this with marbleizing that you might do on paper or something like that, where you put paint on a bath and put the paper in. This is quite different. We're actually applying the paint onto an object to make it look like marble. So we've applied the base coat, left it to dry. We've used the Derivan gesso in this case. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start applying the marbling. The way we do that is to use some spreader medium, and this will help slow the drying time of the paint a little, just by the sheer fact that it goes on quite thick. So make sure you do put it on quite thick. And also it stops the colours mixing with each other, and you'll see what I mean when we start adding the black over the top. So I'm just using a bit of white here. I'm using the student's white. You could use the Derivan artist white. And I have my sponge, sea sponge, which is a little bit damp, so that the paint doesn't dry in the sponge instantly as you put it in. Now, I'm just letting this mix, and of course it's very hard to see on a white background, but I'm just letting the paint mix in randomly. So I don't want a nice even coat. I actually want this background that we're putting on now. So I'm just picking up a little bit of black and a lot of spreader medium. And now what I'm going to do with the feather is just touch the surface. You can use a feather to do this, or you could use, you can use pretty well anything. Something that's soft. It's really handy with a feather, a nice long feather, and if you can shake it a little bit, just to get that sort of random feel to it. Okay, now while that's still wet, I'm going to take my varnish brush, make sure it's nice and dry. Okay, and then while the background is still wet, there's a couple of different techniques here to just, what I'm trying to do is soften it into the background, soften that black into the background and just blend it in a little bit. Okay. So we want to get rid of the harsh lines, but keeping the brush dry the whole time. And just softening it into the background. So we were stippling a second ago, and then now we're just softening that, just so it blends randomly into the white. Okay, so now we're on to the darker marble, the green marble or black marble. So I put a couple of coats of the chalkboard paint on, let it dry obviously. I've got a nice rich matte black finish. And now what we're going to do, in a similar way as to the way we treated the black on the white marble, we've got the black background, we're going to sponge on some greens all mixed together onto the black. And then we're going to run our feather with a little bit of white through it and blend that white into the green. So as we did last time, we've dampened the sponge so it's actually quite moist. If you put this straight into the paint, because it's got air inside the sponge, if it's dry, it will tend to sort of dry straight away, and you tend to end up with hard lumps of paint, dried paint stuck in the sponge. We're going to take our sponge, and you can see here into the spreader medium, and I just want those greens to mix on the sponge, and I don't want them to mix completely. I want a randomness to them, so we're using phthalo green, Australian leaf green, and the Australian sap green. So I want some distinct differences of colour, so I'll just keep picking up little bits and pieces of colour. Now another thing here, you don't want to cover the whole piece. You're only trying to cover probably 50% of it or so. And once again, that's a variation too. We take the feather, which has just been wet a little bit, the same reason as with the sponge. I tend to mix it into the spreader medium first, and then I'll just pick up a bit of white. I don't want too much white, and I'm just going to let it work its way there. The same here. And now, as we did before, I'm just going to soften these areas into the green. Exactly the same as we did for the black into the white. And I did mention before, but it's worth mentioning again. This is quite a small piece I'm doing, so I can do a fair bit of it in one go. But you don't want to sort of do the background, the whole background of a really large piece, and then have the background dry on you before you get a chance to soften the either the background and or the white. You'll notice that I'm drying the brush off as I go every few strokes. I've got quite a lot of paint on here, so it's getting fairly wet fairly quickly, but I need to be careful not to end up with the brush being wet, or else then all we're doing is just painting, really. The veins you'll tend to find, firstly, don't have round edges generally, and they tend not to be crosses, so you just, I think we might have mentioned this before, as they're generally made by water travelling through the rock, you won't get it splitting in an X type formation. It's more likely to be in a sort of Y where it comes together. So now we're done. We'll leave it to dry, and then a coat or two at least of the polymer gloss varnish. I'll then have a look at it, make sure I'm happy, I haven't missed any spots, and I can actually go over it again. I mean, literally with the green and the white in places. If I've missed a bit or I want to add something here and there, I can do that over the polymer gloss varnish. Once again, leave that to dry, and then go over with a couple more coats. And in fact, to get a really authentic three-dimensional look, that's a great way of doing it, layering coats of varnish and trapping the different veins and things in between those coats of varnish. If you've got the time to do it, it will really give a third dimension to your work. So there you go. You really can make anything look like marble.